Captain Alex Martinez stood on the bridge of the USS Endeavour and watched the stars through the main screen. His ship had been traveling for 6 months to reach this distant part of space. Earth had sent them to find new worlds for humans to live on because their home planet was getting too crowded with 12 billion people. The ship's computer made a soft beeping sound. Lisa Chun looked up from her station where she worked as the ship's main diplomat. She had studied alien languages and cultures for years, even though humans had never met any real aliens before. "Captain, I'm getting strange readings on the long-range sensors," she said. "There are ships out there, but they don't match any human designs." Dr. Kevin Brooks moved closer to look at the data on his screen. He was the ship's expert on life forms and had always hoped they would find other intelligent beings in space. His hands shook a little as he read the numbers. "These ships are huge," he whispered. "Much bigger than anything we've ever built. And there are dozens of them." Captain Martinez felt his heart beat faster but kept his voice calm. "Open a communication channel. Let's try to talk to them." The main screen changed to show empty space for a moment. Then suddenly a face appeared that made everyone on the bridge step backward. The creature had gray skin that looked like stone, 4 yellow eyes, and a mouth full of sharp teeth. When it spoke, its voice sounded like metal scraping against metal. "I am War Commander Thexville of the Zephyrian Empire," the alien said. "You have entered our space without permission. Prepare to surrender your ships immediately." Captain Martinez straightened his uniform and stepped forward. "I am Captain Alex Martinez of the human vessel USS Endeavour. We come in peace and hope, to establish friendly relations between our peoples." The alien's 4 eyes narrowed, and it made a sound that might have been laughter but sounded more like grinding gears. "Humans, we have heard whispers of your primitive species. You will submit to Zephyrian rule or be destroyed. These are your only choices." Lisa Chun moved to stand beside her captain. She had practiced this moment many times, but the real thing felt much more frightening. "War Commander, surely we can find a peaceful solution. Our species could benefit from trade and shared knowledge." "Knowledge?" Thexville's voice grew louder and angrier. "You barely understand the basics of space travel. Your weapons are simple metal projectiles. Your shields are weak energy barriers. What could you possibly offer the mighty Zephyrian Empire?" Dr. Brooks checked his instruments and felt cold fear run through his body. "Captain, I'm reading massive energy signatures from their fleet. Their technology is far beyond ours on the screen." Thexville seemed to enjoy their fear. "You have 1 hour to decide. Surrender and become slaves of the Empire or watch your colonies burn. We know about your settlements in the Kepler system. 3 worlds with millions of your people living defenseless lives." The communication ended, and the screen returned to showing stars. Captain Martinez turned to his crew and saw the same fear in their eyes that he felt in his heart. They had come looking for new friends among the stars, but instead found an enemy that could destroy everything. Humans had built. "Send an emergency message to Earth," he ordered. "Tell them about the Zephyrians and their demands. Then plot a course for the Kepler system at maximum speed." The USS Endeavour turned and began racing toward the human colonies, but Captain Martinez knew they would not arrive in time. The Zephyrian ships were faster and had weapons that could destroy entire cities from space. He watched the stars streak past and wondered if this would be humanity's last day of freedom too. Hours later, the ship's communications officer received a signal that made her cry. The first message came from New Dallas Colony in the Kepler system. "We are under attack. The aliens are firing on the city. The shields are failing. Send help." The second message came 30 minutes after that. "New Dallas is gone. They turned the entire colony into ash in less than 10 minutes. We can see their ships coming toward New Boston. There's nowhere to run." The third message never came because there was no one left alive to send. Captain Martinez sat in his command chair and felt the weight of failure crushing down on him. 3 colonies destroyed. Millions of people dead. All because humans had ventured into space without knowing what dangers waited for them among the stars. The USS Endeavour reached the Kepler system and found only empty space where thriving human settlements had existed just hours before. The planets themselves remained, but every trace of human civilization had been erased by weapons beyond their understanding. Set course for Earth, Captain Martinez said quietly. Maximum speed as they fled toward home, long-range sensors detected. The Zephyrian fleet following behind them like hungry wolves chasing wounded prey. The aliens were taking their time because they knew humans had nowhere to hide and no weapons that could stop them. Earth had 6 months before the Zephyrian Empire arrived to finish what they had started. 6 months to find a miracle or watch humanity join the millions of other species that had fallen before the alien war machine. Captain Martinez stared at the stars and wondered if humans would survive long enough to see them again. Dr. Amanda Foster stood in her laboratory deep beneath the ice of Antarctica and stared at the test results on her computer screen. The numbers should have been impossible, but she had checked them dozens of times over the past 3 years. The genetic material they had found in the ancient ice contained DNA unlike anything that had ever lived on Earth. Her assistant, Dr. Carlos Mendez, walked over carrying a steaming cup of coffee. The heating system in their underground facility worked hard to keep them warm, but the cold still seemed to creep through the walls. Any luck with the protein sequences today, Amanda? She rubbed her tired eyes and pointed at the screen. Carlos, look at this. The creature that left this DNA had biological systems that could generate temperatures over 3,000 degrees. Its bones were hollow, but stronger than titanium. And these neural pathways suggest intelligence levels comparable to humans. Dr. Rachel Kim looked up from her workstation across the room where she studied quantum effects in biological systems. Are you still working on those contaminated samples? Amanda, the scientific community already decided that data can't be real. Amanda shook her head firmly. The samples aren't contaminated, Rachel. I've tested them every way possible. This DNA belongs to a creature that actually existed thousands of years ago. Something that our ancestors called dragons. Carlos nearly dropped his coffee cup. Dragons? Amanda, those are just stories people told around campfires. Myths and legends to explain things they didn't understand. Then explain this, Amanda said as she pulled up a 3-dimensional model on her main display. The image showed a massive winged creature with 4 legs, a long tail, and a head full of sharp teeth. This is what the genetic data builds when I run it through the reconstruction program. Every detail matches the dragon descriptions from cultures all around the world. Rachel walked over to examine the model more closely. Her background in quantum physics made her skeptical of most biological theories, but the math behind Amanda's work was solid. Even if these creatures existed, they've been extinct for thousands of years. Why does any of this matter now? Amanda turned to face both of her colleagues with excitement burning in her eyes. Because 3 days ago I received a call from Admiral Patricia Walsh. The Zephyrian Empire is coming to destroy humanity, and our current weapons can't stop them. The military is looking for any scientific breakthrough that might give us an advantage. The laboratory fell silent except for the humming of computers and the distant sound of generators. Carlos set down his coffee and stared at the dragon model rotating slowly on the screen. Amanda, are you suggesting we try to bring these creatures back to life? That's impossible with current technology. Not impossible, she replied. Difficult. Dangerous and completely untested, but not impossible. We have complete genetic sequences from multiple specimens. The quantum cloning techniques Rachel developed last year could theoretically reconstruct living tissue from this data. Rachel began pacing around the small laboratory as her mind worked through the scientific challenges. The energy requirements alone would be enormous. And even if we could clone the basic biological structure, we'd have no way to program the complex behaviors and intelligence these creatures would need. Amanda smiled for the first time in days. That's where the quantum neural mapping comes. The DNA doesn't just contain instructions for building the body. It contains quantum entangled patterns that could store memory and instinct data. If we're careful, we might be able to clone not just the creature's body, but also its mind. Carlos looked between his 2 colleagues and realized they were serious about this insane plan. Let's say you're right and we can actually bring back a dragon. How would that help against an alien invasion? These creatures lived in medieval times when the most advanced weapons were swords and bows, because according to the genetic data, dragons were designed for war, Amanda explained as she brought up more detailed scans on her computer. Look at these specialized organs. This one generates and stores plasma at temperatures that could melt through any known armor. This structure creates electromagnetic fields strong enough to disrupt electronic systems. And these neural clusters suggest they could form telepathic bonds with other intelligent beings. Rachel stopped pacing and stared at the screen. The quantum physicist in her was fascinated by the biological mechanisms Amanda had discovered. You're talking about creatures that could fly through space, breathe plasma hot enough to cut through starship hulls, and form mental connections with human pilots? Exactly, Amanda said. The perfect biological weapon system. No technology for the aliens to understand or counter. No electronic systems they can hack or disable. Just raw evolutionary power guided by human intelligence. The three scientists stood in silence for several minutes as the full implications of Amanda's proposal sank in. They were talking about bringing back creatures from legend to fight a war against aliens from the stars. It sounded like something from a science fiction movie rather than a real scientific project. Carlos was the first to speak. Even if this could work, the risks are incredible. We'd be dealing with apex predators that could kill us all if something went wrong. And we'd need massive funding, government support, and facilities far beyond what we have here, Amanda nodded. I know. That's why I already contacted Admiral Walsh. She's flying down here tomorrow to see our research firsthand. If she approves the project, we'll have unlimited resources and the full support of Earth's military. Rachel sat down heavily in her chair as she considered the magnitude of what they were discussing. Amanda, if we do this and it works, we won't just be changing the course of human history. We'll be bringing back a species that went extinct for reasons we don't understand. What if there was a good reason they disappeared? And then we'll find out together, Amanda replied. Because right. Now this might be humanity's only chance for survival. The Zephyrians have destroyed dozens of other species with their advanced technology. But they've never faced dragons before. She turned back to her computer and began pulling up the files she would need for tomorrow's presentation. Somewhere in the quantum patterns of ancient DNA lay the key to humanity's future. Dragons had once ruled the skies of Earth, and if Amanda was right, they could rule the stars as well. The laboratory returned to its usual quiet, humming as three scientists worked through the night to prepare for the most important meeting of their lives. Outside, the Antarctic wind howled across endless ice fields where the bones of legends lay buried beneath thousands of years of snow. By morning, Admiral Walsh would decide whether dragons would rise again to defend the world they had once called home. Colonel Jack Harrison stood inside the massive underground chamber that had been carved from the Antarctic ice and tried not to think about how insane this mission was. 6 months had passed since Admiral Walsh approved the Dragon Initiative, and the facility had grown from a small research lab into a complex that housed over 200 scientists, engineers, and military personnel. The creature sleeping in the center of the chamber was 15 feet tall and 30 feet long from nose to tail. Its scales were deep red with hints of gold that seemed to glow in the artificial light. Dr. Amanda Foster had named it Alpha 7, but everyone called it Blaze because of the way heat shimmered around its body even when it was resting. Are you ready for this, Jack? Dr. Foster asked as she checked the neural interface headset one more time. The device looked like a helmet covered in thin wires and quantum processors that would connect his mind directly to the dragons. Consciousness. Colonel Harrison nodded even though his hands were shaking slightly. 3 other volunteers had tried to bond with dragons over the past month. 2 had suffered permanent brain damage, and the 3rd had died when his nervous system couldn't handle the mental connection. But the military needed dragon riders, and Harrison had volunteered to be the first successful test. Remember, Dr. Carlos Mendez said from his monitoring station, the dragon's mind is completely alien. Don't try to control it. Let it guide the connection and only offer suggestions through the mental link. Dr. Rachel Kim was watching quantum readings that measured the electromagnetic field around both Harrison and the dragon. The creature is showing increased neural activity. I think it knows what we're trying to do, Admiral Patricia. Walsh stood behind protective barriers with President Maria Santos, who had flown down to witness this historic moment. The president had authorized unlimited funding for the project after seeing reports of Zephian fleet movements heading toward Earth. They had perhaps 4 months before the alien invasion. Harrison walked slowly toward Blaise as technicians placed the neural headset on his head. The dragon's eyes opened and fixed on him with an intelligence that was unmistakably aware and curious. Those eyes were larger than dinner plates and glowed with an inner fire that seemed to see straight through to his soul, initiating neural interface in 3, 2, 1. Dr. Foster announced as she activated the quantum connection. The world exploded into sensation that no human mind was designed to handle. Harrison felt himself falling through layers of consciousness that belonged to a creature born from DNA that was thousands of years old. The dragon's thoughts were vast and ancient, filled with memories of soaring through skies and breathing fire that could melt stone. For a terrifying moment, Harrison thought his mind would shatter under the pressure. Then something unexpected happened. The dragon began to hold back its overwhelming presence, carefully adjusting its mental contact so that Harrison could survive the connection. It was trying to protect him. Images flooded through their shared consciousness. Harrison saw Earth as it had been in ancient times when dragons ruled the skies and worked alongside early humans. He felt the dragon's sorrow for its long-dead species and its confusion about why it had been brought back to life. But underneath everything else, he sensed its fierce desire to protect the world it had once called home. Neural connection stabilizing, Dr. Kim reported with amazement in her voice. Both subjects are maintaining steady brainwave patterns. The quantum entanglement is holding. Harrison opened his eyes and found himself looking at Blaise from a completely new perspective. He could feel the dragon's massive heart beating, sense the incredible power contained in its muscles, and understand the complex chemistry that allowed it to generate plasma hot enough to cut through starship armor. More importantly, he could feel Blaise's emotions. The dragon was lonely after being the only one of its kind for months, but now it felt hope because it had found a partner who could understand its thoughts. They were no longer human and dragon, but something new, a bonded pair that combined human intelligence with draconic power. It worked, Harrison whispered as he reached out to touch Blaise's massive head. The dragon lowered its neck to make the contact easier, and Harrison felt warmth that had nothing to do with temperature flow between them. Admiral Walsh stepped forward with tears in her eyes. She had been a military officer for 30 years, but had never seen anything as beautiful or terrifying as the bond forming before her. Colonel, can you communicate with it? Does it understand what we need? Harrison closed his eyes and let his consciousness merge more fully with Blaise's ancient mind. Through their connection, he shared images of the Zephyrian fleet, the destroyed human colonies, and the coming invasion. The dragon's response was immediate and fierce, a surge of protective rage that made Harrison stagger backward. It understands, he said. Dragons were created to be guardians. Blaise knows that its species failed to protect Earth in the past, but it won't fail again. It wants to fight. Dr. Foster was already preparing the next phase of the program. We have 22 other dragons in various stages of development. If we can find riders for all of them, we'll have a fighting force unlike anything the galaxy has ever seen. Over the following weeks, more volunteers arrived at the Antarctic facility. Major Susan Roberts bonded with a blue-scaled cryoworm that could freeze enemy weapons with its breath. Lieutenant Danny White formed a connection with Thunderstrike, a massive dragon built for combat in the vacuum of space. Each successful bonding was a miracle of science and courage, but for every success there were failures that reminded everyone how dangerous this project was. The neural interface killed 2 more volunteers and left another in a coma that doctors sighed might be permanent. The dragons were not pets or simple weapons, but ancient beings with their own personalities and requirements. Captain Alex Martinez arrived from his recovered ship to oversee pilot training in Earth's upper atmosphere. The dragons learned to coordinate with human military tactics while their riders adapted to thinking in 3 dimensions and managing the incredible sensory input their mounts provided. Time is running short, Admiral Walsh announced during a briefing in the command center. Long-range sensors show the Zephyrian fleet will reach our solar system in 6 weeks. We need to keep the Dragon Corps secret until the moment of battle, or we'll lose our only advantage. Harrison stood with his hand resting on Blaze's neck and felt the dragon's eagerness for combat flowing through their mental link. Around them, 20 other dragons waited with their human partners, each pair representing humanity's hope for survival against impossible odds. The Zephyrians thought they were coming to destroy a primitive species with simple technology. Instead, they would face creatures from legend backed by human determination and courage. Dragons had once protected Earth in ancient times, and now they would defend it among the stars. The Age of Dragons was about to return to the galaxy in ways no one could have imagined. Fleet Marshal Vexville stood on the command bridge of his flagship, Void Render, and watched the small blue planet growing larger on the main display screen. Earth looked peaceful from space with its white clouds and brown continents, but he knew it held 12 billion humans who would soon learn the price of defying the Zephyrian Empire. Report on human defensive positions. He ordered his tactical officer. 300 human vessels have gathered near the 4th planet in this system, came the reply. Their largest ships are primitive compared to our technology. Our quantum shields should deflect their kinetic weapons easily. Vexville's 4 yellow eyes gleamed with satisfaction. The humans had destroyed 3 of his colonies and killed millions of his people, but their punishment would be swift and complete. He commanded over 300 warships, including planet-killer weapons that could turn entire worlds into ash. Begin the attack. Destroy their fleet first, then eliminate all life on the planet's surface. I want this species erased from the galaxy near Mars orbit. Admiral Patricia Walsh watched the approaching Zephyrian fleet through the bridge windows of her flagship USS Liberty. Captain Alex Martinez stood beside her, having recovered from his injuries during the first encounter with the aliens 6 months ago. Both officers knew their ships were outgunned, but they had a secret weapon the enemy couldn't imagine: all human vessels. Prepare for engagement, Admiral Walsh broadcast to the fleet. Remember, our job is to draw their attention and keep them focused on us until our special forces can strike on the moon's hidden dark side. Colonel Jack Harrison felt Blaze's excitement flowing through their neural connection as 23 dragons prepared for launch from concealed bays carved into the lunar rock. Each dragon carried its human rider and represented years of secret research and desperate hope. Dragon Corps. This is Dragon Leader, Harrison spoke into his communication system. Remember your training? Stay together, hit them hard, and show these aliens what Earth's children can do. Major Susan Roberts checked her ice-blue Dragon Frost one more time as they waited in the launch tube. Lieutenant Danny White sat astride the massive Thunderstrike, whose scales were built to survive in the vacuum of space. Around them, other dragons breathed small flames or stretched their wings in anticipation of battle. The space battle began with long-range weapons fire as the human fleet engaged the Zephyrian Armada. Quantum torpedoes from the alien ships tore through human shields and destroyed 2 destroyers in the first few minutes. The USS Defiance exploded in a brilliant flash that could be seen from Earth's surface. Human weapons are ineffective against our shields, reported the Zephyrian tactical officer. Their primitive missiles cannot penetrate our defenses. Fleet Marshal Vexville watched human ships die and felt the same satisfaction he had experienced during dozens of other conquests. These creatures fought bravely, but courage meant nothing against superior technology. In 2 hours, the human fleet would be destroyed, and he could begin bombarding their planet. That was when the dragons launched. 23 creatures burst from hidden bays on the moon using natural gravitational manipulation that Zephyrian sensors couldn't properly detect. They accelerated through space faster than any ship the aliens had ever seen, their scales glowing with inner fire as they approached the enemy fleet. What are those objects? A Zephyrian officer asked as strange readings appeared on his instruments. Unknown. Biological signatures, came the confused reply. They appear to be living creatures, but that's impossible in the vacuum of space. Harrison guided Blaze toward the nearest Zephyrian cruiser while speaking to his dragon through their mental connection. The massive creature understood human military tactics, but also possessed ancient instincts for aerial combat that no technology could. Replicate Blaze struck the enemy ship's hull with claws that could tear through titanium and breathed plasma hot enough to melt starship armor. The Zephyrian vessel's quantum shields had been designed to stop energy weapons and missiles, not biological attacks that operated outside the laws of physics as the aliens understood them. Hull breach on Deck 7, reported a panicked Zephyrian crew member as molten metal flowed through corridors that had never been damaged in 100 battles. Major Roberts and Frost attacked 2 escort vessels simultaneously. The cryoworm's breath weapon froze enemy weapon systems at temperatures approaching absolute zero. While its rider used human targeting systems to guide the attacks with precision, no animal could achieve a lone Lieutenant White and Thunderstrike grappled directly with a Zephyrian battleship in a display of raw power that left the enemy crew speechless. The massive dragon wrapped its body around the ship's hull and began tearing apart shield generators with claws and teeth. Fleet Marshal Vexville stared at his tactical display in complete disbelief as creatures from primitive mythology destroyed his supposedly invincible fleet. What are those things? How is this possible? Sir, our weapons cannot lock onto them properly, his gunner reported. They move too unpredictably and our targeting computers don't recognize their biological signatures. Use manual targeting. Destroy them all. Vexville ordered, but his voice carried uncertainty. For the first time in his military career, the dragons had spent months training for this moment, and they fought with a coordination that amazed their human partners. They shared information through telepathic links that no electronic communication could match and adapted their tactics faster than any computer could calculate. Harrison felt Blaze's joy as they destroyed another enemy ship together. The dragon had been alone for months, but now it fought alongside its own kind for the first time since being reborn. Through their mental connection, Harrison experienced the pure satisfaction of a predator defending its territory. Dragon cores spread out and hit their command ships, he ordered through the communication system. Let's show them what happens when you threaten Earth. The battle turned into a rout as dragons struck throughout the Zephyrian fleet. Ships that had conquered dozens of worlds found themselves helpless against enemies that fought with claws and fire instead of conventional weapons. The aliens had tactical doctrines for every known form of warfare, but nothing in their experience had prepared them for dragons, sir. We've lost 40% of our fleet, the tactical officer reported to Fleet Marshal Vexville. These creatures are destroying us faster than we can respond. Vexville watched another of his battleships die as a dragon breathed plasma through its bridge and realized that his empire's expansion had finally met something it couldn't defeat. For 1,000 years, the Zephyrians had used superior technology to crush primitive species, but now the primitives had found allies the Empire couldn't understand. Retreat, he ordered, the word tasting like poison in his mouth. All ships withdraw to the outer system as the surviving Zephyrian vessels fled. Harrison guided Blaze back toward the human fleet. Around them, other dragons roared their victory into the vacuum of space using sounds that could be felt rather than heard through the neural connections their riders shared. Admiral Walsh watched from the bridge of USS Liberty as impossible creatures from legend escorted the battered but victorious human fleet back toward Earth. The planet that had been hours away from destruction was now safe, and humanity had announced its presence to the galaxy in a way no one would ever forget. Dragon Leader, this is Admiral Walsh, she broadcast to Colonel Harrison. Welcome to the new age of human warfare. Harrison smiled as he felt Blaze's contentment flowing through their bond. The dragon had fulfilled its ancient purpose and found its place in the modern world. Around them, Earth's blue skies waited to welcome home the guardians that had returned from legend to defend the world they loved. News of humanity's impossible victory spread across the galaxy faster than the fastest starships could travel. On 100 different worlds, alien species that had lived under Zephyrian rule for generations heard whispers that the Empire's greatest fleet had been destroyed by creatures from ancient legends. Dr. Amanda Foster stood in her expanded laboratory complex and watched as representatives from 6 different alien races examined dragon genetic samples through quantum microscopes. The Crystalline Collective had sent their best scientists, while the Aquarian Federation provided star charts showing where similar creatures might have once lived. The DNA patterns match fossils we discovered on our homeworld 300 years ago, explained science leader Kethver of the Crystalline Collective. His body was made of living silicon that sparkled like diamonds in the laboratory lights. Our ancestors called them Skyfire Guardians before they vanished from our world. Dr. Carlos Mendez pulled up holographic displays showing genetic comparisons between Earth dragons and samples from 12 different planets. It appears dragons existed throughout this entire region of the galaxy. Something caused their extinction everywhere except Earth, where they survived in hidden stasis. Commander Ketzmer, a former Zephyrian officer who had defected after witnessing dragon combat, studied the research data with fascination. His gray skin and 4 yellow eyes marked him as one of the enemy, but his hatred for the Empire that had enslaved his people made him a valuable ally. The Empire has legends of flying creatures that once ruled the stars, he said in his harsh, metallic voice. Our histories claim they were destroyed because they threatened Zephyrian expansion. Perhaps our ancestors were more truthful than we realized. The Dragon Corps had grown from 23 riders to over 50 as more volunteers successfully bonded with newly cloned dragons. Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka from Japan had formed a connection with Tempest, a dragon that could control electrical storms. Captain Pierre Dubois from France partnered with Whisper, a creature that could bend light around itself to become nearly invisible. Colonel Jack Harrison landed Blaze on the facility's main platform and felt his dragon's curiosity about their alien visitors flowing through their mental connection. The massive creature had learned to recognize different species and could sense their emotions through electromagnetic fields that most technology couldn't detect. How many dragons can we produce with our current resources? Admiral Patricia Walsh asked during the daily briefing in the command center. Dr. Foster checked her production schedules and genetic material supplies. We can support approximately 100 dragons with current cloning facilities. But if we build new laboratories on the Moon and Mars, we could potentially create 500 within 2 years. The Zephyrian Empire won't wait 2 years to respond, Captain Alex Martinez warned as he reviewed intelligence reports from across the galaxy. Their remaining fleets are regrouping and they're developing new weapons specifically designed to counter dragon attacks. Major Susan Roberts entered the briefing room with Frost still clinging to her flight suit from training exercises with her cryoworm partner. Frost has been communicating with the other dragons through their telepathic network. They're sharing battle memories and tactical information faster than we could ever teach them. This was perhaps the most remarkable discovery about the dragons. Their ability to share knowledge instantly across vast distances through quantum, entangled consciousness that human science barely understood. A dragon on Earth could learn combat techniques from one fighting near Jupiter in real time. Sir, we're receiving a priority transmission from the Centauri system, announced the communications officer. The main display screen showed Captain Lisa Xion speaking from the bridge of a human diplomatic vessel. Behind her, the stars were filled with hundreds of alien ships from species that had never worked together before. Admiral Walsh, the Galactic Liberation Alliance is requesting immediate military assistance, she reported. The Zephyrians have deployed their planet killer weapon against New Geneva colony. 2 million civilians are trapped and evacuation is impossible. The planet killer was the Empire's most feared weapon, a moon-sized vessel that could destroy entire worlds by destabilizing their stars. No conventional fleet had ever survived an encounter with its massive weapons and quantum field generators. Dragon Corps, prepare for immediate deployment, Admiral Walsh ordered. This is what we've been training for. Harrison felt Blaz's excitement as they prepared for the longest flight of their partnership. The Centauri system was weeks away, even for dragons traveling at their maximum speed through hyperspace, but the Alien Alliance had provided quantum tunnel generators that could transport them instantly across interstellar distances. Dr. Rachel. Kim was making final adjustments to the neural interface systems when alarms began sounding throughout the facility. Amanda, I'm detecting massive gravitational distortions near Jupiter. Something big is coming out of hyperspace. The main display showed space around Jupiter's moons filling with Zephyrian ships as the Empire's reserve fleets arrived to reclaim their honor. War Marshal Vexville had been demoted after his defeat at Earth, but he still commanded over 200 vessels, including new anti-dragon weapons that generated neural disruption fields. They're jamming our quantum tunnels, reported the tactical officer. The dragons can't reach Centauri while those ships are blocking our transmission systems. Harrison realized they faced an impossible choice. They could fight the Zephyrian fleet near Jupiter and save Earth, but New Geneva would be destroyed. Or they could abandon Earth's defense to rescue the colonists and leave their homeworld vulnerable to invasion. There's a third option, Dr. Foster announced as she activated her personal communication system. Commander Ketzmer, how many of your people would fight against the Empire if they had dragons to ride? The defected Zephyrian officer's 4 eyes blazed with sudden understanding. Thousands of my people dream of freedom from imperial rule. If you could give us the power to fight back, entire sectors would join your rebellion. Within hours, the first non-human dragon riders were bonding with newly cloned creatures in an emergency program that pushed the neural interface technology beyond all safety limits. Zephyrian rebels, crystalline collective warriors, and Aquarian Federation fighters all discovered they could form connections with dragons despite their alien biology. The sight of a Zephyrian rebel riding a dragon into combat against his own species became a symbol of hope for oppressed peoples throughout the galaxy. These were no longer just humanity's guardians, but liberators for any species brave enough to stand against tyranny. Dragon Corps, this is Dragon Leader, Harrison announced as 50 riders from 6 different species prepared for battle. Today, we don't just fight for Earth or humanity. We fight for every world that dreams of freedom. Blaze roared its agreement as they launched toward the enemy fleet, followed by dragons carrying human, Zephyrian, crystalline, and Aquarian riders united in common cause. The Age of Dragons had returned to bring justice to the stars. The planet killer moved through space like a mechanical moon covered in weapons that could destroy entire star systems. Its massive hull stretched for hundreds of miles and contained technology beyond the understanding of most galactic species. Inside its command center, War Marshal Vexville prepared to demonstrate why the Zephyrian Empire had ruled this region of space for over 1,000 years. Target the human colony's star, he ordered his weapons officer. When we destabilize its nuclear reactions, the explosion will destroy every planet in this system on New Geneva. 2 million human colonists watched their sky fill with evacuation ships that couldn't possibly carry them all to safety in time. Children pressed against windows while their parents tried to remain calm, despite knowing they had perhaps hours left to live. Captain Alex Martinez commanded the combined human and alien fleet that had gathered to defend the colony, but his ships were hopelessly outmatched. The planet killer's shields could deflect the firepower of entire battle groups, while its main weapons could vaporize capital ships with single shots. All vessels spread out and engage the escort fleet, he ordered through the communication system. Keep them busy while the Dragon Corps attempts their assault on the main target. 50 dragons launched from hidden positions throughout the Centauri system, carrying riders from 6 different species united in common cause. Colonel Jack Harrison felt Blaze's determination flowing through their neural connection as they approached the massive enemy weapon together. Remember the plan, Harrison broadcast to his diverse team of riders. We have to penetrate the planet killer's hull and destroy its power core from the inside. The neural disruptors will try to break our bonds with our dragons, so stay focused on your mental connections. Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka guided her storm dragon. Tempest threw a barrage of defensive fire while electric energy crackled around them. Beside her, Captain Pierre Dubois and his shadow dragon Whisper used their light-bending abilities to confuse enemy targeting systems commander Ketzmer rode a newly bonded dragon called Vengeance and felt strange satisfaction at using Zephyrian combat training against his own former empire. His people had suffered under imperial rule for generations, and today they would strike back with power. The empire couldn't understand the first wave of dragons reached the planet killer's outer defenses and immediately encountered the neural disruptor fields that War Marshal Vexville had deployed specifically to counter dragon attacks. The quantum interference tried to sever the telepathic bonds between riders and their mounts. 3 dragon riders lost their connections and were forced to retreat as their minds couldn't handle the artificial interference. But the remaining dragons adapted by sharing their mental load across the telepathic network that connected all of their species. The disruptors are only partially effective. Major Susan Roberts reported as her cryoworm frost-breathed freezing mist across enemy weapon batteries. Our dragons are learning to resist the interference faster than the Zephyrians can adjust their systems. Blaze and Harrison penetrated the planet killer's outer hull through a breach created by concentrated plasma breath from 6 dragons working together. Inside the massive weapon, they found corridors large enough for starships and technology that hummed with barely contained power. Dragon leader to all units, Harrison announced as they flew through the artificial caverns inside the weapon. We're approaching the main reactor chamber. Prepare for heavy resistance. The interior of the planet killer was defended by automated systems and Zephyrian soldiers in powered armor who had never faced enemies like dragons in close combat. Their weapons were designed for fighting other technology, not creatures that could breathe plasma and move with predatory grace. Lieutenant Danny White and his massive dragon thunderstrike smashed through blast doors that had been built to stop starship weapons. Behind them, other dragons followed while their riders used human military tactics combined with draconic instincts to overcome defenses that had protected the planet killer for centuries. Sir, unknown hostiles have penetrated reactor section 7, reported a terrified Zephyrian officer. Our security forces are being overwhelmed by creatures that appear to be large animals with humanoid riders. War Marshal Vexville felt cold fear creep through his mind as he realized these primitive creatures might actually succeed in destroying his ultimate weapon. Activate emergency containment protocols. Seal all reactor sections and prepare to jettison the power core, but the dragons had already reached their target. The planet killer's main reactor was a contained artificial singularity that provided unlimited energy for the weapon's devastating attacks. Destroying it would create an explosion visible from nearby star systems. Harrison guided Blaze toward the reactor's control systems while feeling his dragon's growing excitement. Through their mental connection, he sensed that Blaze understood the importance of this moment and was prepared to make any sacrifice necessary to protect the innocent people on New Geneva. All dragon riders fall back to a minimum safe distance, Harrison ordered as he prepared for the final phase of their mission. Blaze and I will overload the reactor core. Negative dragon leader, came simultaneous replies from over a dozen riders. We're staying with you. Major Roberts and Frost took position beside them along with Lieutenant Tanaka and Tempest. Commander Ketzmer and Vengeance joined the group despite having bonded with his dragon only days earlier. One by one, every surviving dragon rider moved into formation around the reactor core. Harrison felt tears in his eyes as he realized what his fellow riders were choosing. The reactor overload would require multiple dragons working together, and none of them would survive the explosion that followed. But 2 million civilians would live because 50 riders chose to sacrifice everything for people they had never met. Begin synchronized plasma bombardment on my mark, Harrison announced, as the dragons formed a circle around the massive reactor. It's been an honor serving with all of you. The dragons breathed plasma simultaneously while their riders channeled human tactical knowledge through the telepathic bonds. The combined heat and energy overloaded the reactor's containment systems and began a chain reaction that would tear the planet killer apart from within. Reactor containment failing, reported the Zephyrian engineering officer. Recommend immediate evacuation of all personnel. War Marshal Vexville stared at his displays in disbelief as creatures from primitive legends destroyed the most powerful weapon his empire had ever built. All ships retreat to minimum safe distance. Prepare emergency hyperspace jump. The planet killer exploded in a blast of light that could be seen from New Geneva's surface. The artificial singularity that had powered the weapon consumed itself and took 50 dragon riders with it. But their sacrifice saved 2 million human lives and dealt a crushing blow to Zephyrian military power 6 months later. Representatives from over 30 species gathered on the neutral world of Harmony Station to sign the Galactic Peace Accords. The Zephyrian Empire had agreed to end its expansion and release all subject species in exchange for avoiding complete destruction by the growing Dragon Corps. Dr. Amanda Foster, now Director of Interspecies Genetic Research, stood before the Assembly and announced that dragon DNA had been found on 47 different worlds. The ancient Guardians had once protected life throughout this region of space, and now they would do so again. Children from dozens of different species played in the gardens outside the conference center while dragons soared overhead carrying riders from every major galactic civilization. The creatures that had once been dismissed as myths and legends were now symbols of hope and protection for countless worlds. The Age of Dragons had returned to the galaxy and brought with it a new era of peace built on the sacrifice of heroes who chose to protect strangers rather than preserve themselves. In the stars above Harmony Station, young dragons practiced aerial maneuvers with their riders while preparing to defend a universe where freedom meant more than power and legends could become reality when courage demanded impossible choices.